your Inner Critic YouTube channel. For those of you that don't know me, I am Joanna Kleinman, licensed psychotherapist, best-selling author of the book Dethroning Your Inner Critic, the 4-step journey from self-doubt to self-empowerment, host of the Dethroning Your Inner Critic podcast, creator of the Mind Method and the Mastering Your Mind program. So I've already seen the Barbie movie twice, and I thought it was absolutely mind-blowing and brilliant, and maybe one of the most powerful movies I've seen in years. Now, I've never played with Barbie. I had no interest. I played with plastic horse models, the way other girls played with Barbies, but I have a unique combination of inner critics that have been with me for my whole life. The perfectionist inner critic, the restless and inadequate inner critics that continue to deliver the same never-ending message to me, no matter what my life looks like. Now, for your unique profile, you can take my inner critic assessment at innercriticassessment.com. So for generations, our culture has played a huge role in our collective sense of self and our emotional and physical and mental and spiritual health. Now, this goes for both men and women. So I'm going to talk about a lot of spoiler alerts, so I just want to make you aware of this. But my purpose, not just for this podcast, but for all of my work, is to help men and women alike to unhook themselves from the subconscious programming of their inner critic minds, because that is the real reason why we all suffer. So let's start with the opening scene, which, by the way, was a nod to the opening scene of Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. So the idea that women could break from just being mothers, that we could be anything we want to be. We can own our own car and our own house, and we can achieve anything that we put our minds to. And that supposedly this was going to solve all of our problems. Except now in our culture today, we have very unattainable standards of who and what we think we need to be. And this has been for generations, and not just with women. This is with men too. So in the scene where the Barbies are accepting their awards and the Nobel Peace Prize Barbie says, "I worked so hard, so I deserve this." Now, this is rarely how very accomplished women in our culture think. Most successful women that I work with or that I know personally suffer from imposter syndrome. And they often believe that they don't deserve the accolades and the rewards. And they often credit their success to other people or to luck, but they don't usually credit themselves and their own hard work. Okay. And many talented and brilliant women don't know that they're brilliant because we are so conditioned into this imposter syndrome. So many of us feel like at any moment, someone's going to find out that we're really not good enough for all that we've accomplished. And then lawyer Barbie is accepting her award, and she says, "This makes me emotional and I'm expressing it. I have no difficulty holding both logic and emotion at the same time. It doesn't diminish my powers, it expands them." Mind-blowing. So women have been depicted for generations now as though we are too emotional. And so many women in high positions of power within organizations or leadership roles feel as though they need to suppress their emotions, or they're going to be viewed as weak and less powerful. And men have been given the message that the only acceptable emotion for them to feel is anger. Otherwise, they're weak. But the truth is that our ability to feel all of our emotions is the only path to our success in the most important areas of our life, in our relationships, in our sense of self, in our confidence, in our ability to be successful professionally. So now when we are introduced to Ken in the movie, he thinks his only purpose is beach and to get Barbie to notice him. He has no sense of himself without beach and Barbie. And this is how our culture identifies men. Their identity is associated with how much money they make, what is their position of power, right? In Barbie land, the Kens are inferior and worthless without beach and Barbie. So now Barbie has this existential crisis. Her life has been perfect up until now, until she experiences the fear of death for the very first time. Now, this is the ultimate fear that is the foundation of all of our suffering. So her perfection begins to crumble when she starts to worry about death. Now, the other Barbies don't think about death. They don't think about the future. They're in the bubble of perfection. But Barbie land is monotonous. It's boring. Everyone is the same. Every day is the same. There's no other emotion but happiness. Everyone is named Barbie and Ken. There's no diversity. There's no range of experience. Nothing and no one ever really grows and evolves. And that's the existential crisis that's at the heart of being human, because we actually need to fully feel and experience the anxiety of death and to question, what is the real purpose of my life while I'm here on this earth? Because at the end of our life, we all want to have had our life stand for something. So if we're always trying to avoid our most painful emotions, that's the very thing that fuels our inner critic, because our inner critic is there to try to protect us from pain. And the more that we feed into that idea and allow ourselves to try to perfect ourselves in life so that we don't feel pain, not only are we fueling our inner critic and the subconscious thoughts and beliefs that govern our inner critic, okay, but we are not able to be on the path to a full and meaningful life if we're chasing perfection. So if we keep believing that we have to fit our ideal pictures, that's the road to nowhere. So we've got to stop trying to prevent the pain, right? That's what this movie so brilliantly illustrates. Our money, our status, our power, our relationships, our beauty, our career, our accomplishments are never going to take away our fear and doubt and pain. And so when we think that that's the key to take away the pain, that's the very thing that creates our pain. Now, as soon as Barbie tries to resist the unknown and uncontrollable future, everything turns to shit, right? The shower becomes cold, the waffles burn, the milk spoils, and she develops flat feet and cellulite and bad breath. So she also experiences embarrassment for the first time. And the other Barbies and Kens are so afraid of change and imperfection, they actually begin to vomit, right? So Barbie then goes and seeks out the wisdom of Weird Barbie, who has battle wounds from the life that she's lived. She's actually lived life. And that's actually what makes her the wisest and most knowledgeable Barbie. Now, Barbie wants to get back to perfection, okay? When we are all small children, that's when our subconscious mind is formed. And that is when we first believe that we have to find a way back to perfection. We've got to fix our faults, fix our flaws. That's how we're going to be loved and valued and valued. right? And this is all of us. This is men and women. We chase perfection in whatever way we do, in grades, in college acceptance, in looks, in primary relationships, in accomplishments, in achievements, in goals, in money, in things. And we've been doing this for generations, okay? And this is exactly why, as of today, we are more damaged emotionally and mentally and physically and spiritually than ever before in human history. Now, this is what dethroning your inner critic is really all about. When you're willing to turn towards your emotions and examine your imperfections and the parts of yourself and your life that you've been ashamed of or you've been embarrassed by. This is the path towards freedom. But just like in Barbie world, we want to avoid that shame and embarrassment. So when Barbie is asked by Weird Barbie if she wants to know the truth about the universe, she says no. She's offered either the pink high heel or the Birkenstock. And she keeps saying, I want the perfect pink high heel. And Weird Barbie says, no, you need to choose the Birkenstock, right? So we need to choose the Birkenstock. We need to go into the long and uncomfortable road to really understand the thoughts and the beliefs that are underneath our pain and suffering, okay? Because otherwise, if we're trying to chase happiness by trying to find that ideal future, that's never going to come. No matter what your life brings, it cannot bring you peace and fulfillment. That has to come from inside ourselves, right? So every other Barbie and Ken won't choose the hard path. They want to stay in Barbie land, right? They want to have everything be the same and in control all of the time. Now, I think that those of you who are listening to this, you might be on a different path than some other people. You might be someone who is seeking understanding and awareness and consciousness. That's why you are drawn to work like this, okay? This is not a path that most people take. So the path to true peace and contentment and fulfillment in our life is not what we have been led to believe. We've been led to believe that our joy lies in the future. So we look at our life as this long journey. We've got our past stretched out behind us. We've got our future stretched out in front of us, right? And then we're trying to figure out how to get to this ideal dream future, which has us hurrying through our life now to get to that future, which never comes. This is the heart of our suffering. This is the seduction of perfectionism that we've been sold for our whole lives. Now, she sets off on that journey. This is the first time we hear the song Closer to Find by the Indigo Girls. She's trying to find the truth of the universe. And guess how many different vehicles she needs to take to get there? She's got to take a car and a bike and a boat and a camper and a rocket ship and a snowmobile. And the song is playing. I went to the doctor. I went to the mountains. I looked to the children. I drank from the fountains. There's more than one answer to these questions pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive, closer I am to find. We are only closer to find when we can embrace the whole crooked line of the journey and stop searching for the one definitive answer, because there is none. Think about this in your own life. Are you waiting for some ideal situation or circumstance in your life? Are you waiting for something else to change, for someone else to change, to make you feel fine? Now, when Barbie gets to the real world, which is LA's Venice Beach, She immediately feels self-conscious and she senses an undertone of violence. Now, Ken just says he feels fabulous, right? She looks around and she sees real people experiencing a full range of emotions. She sees people laughing and crying and fighting and feeling lonely and feeling shame. And this is when she cries for the first time. And she says about her crying, it feels achy but good. In other words, when we let ourselves actually feel, it can actually feel good. Emotional pain and imperfection can be beautiful. She sees an old woman at the bus stop. She's never seen an old woman before. And for the first time, she sees beauty in something that is imperfect. Now, Ken is discovering that to feel worthy in the real world, he has to be muscular and strong and overpowering to women, right? And he feels valued in the real world for the very first time. He's discovering how crippling it's been, right? For him in his culture in Barbie land, right? So here we're seeing that men also have to live up to a different kind of unattainable standard, okay? And unlike women, men are not allowed to feel shame, embarrassment, or fear. This is what toxic masculinity really is, right? It's from men trying to avoid the deeper pain that is human pain. And our culture does not let men feel that. At least women are able to communicate their feelings of fear and inadequacy to other women. Men are left to fight their inner demons all by themselves. So now we get introduced to the CEO of Mattel, played by the brilliant Will Ferrell. And he says, we can't let the fake world infiltrate the real world. He believes, and he truly believes this, that Mattel sells dreams, imagination, and sparkle, right? But we only need to look to the multi-billion-dollar industries of beauty and fashion and diet to see that these industries proclaim to make women feel beautiful and empowered and healthy, but this has actually kept women in a box for centuries, right? And Sasha, who is the adolescent that Barbie thinks she has to find, tells Barbie this by saying, Barbie, you've destroyed women's self-worth with sexualized capitalism. Now, the Will Ferrell character is afraid that Barbie won't get back into her box. If she doesn't get back into her box, it's going to be catastrophic. Now, the patriarchy in our society, okay, is trying to keep women in a box, right? And Barbie, for the first time, experiences what she calls fear with no specific reason, which she is then told later on, oh, that's anxiety. And I personally believe that many of us don't even recognize how much anxiety we really feel trying to keep up with our ideal standards that have been fed to us for generations upon generations. Now, Will Ferrell's character says that Ken isn't something that they're even worried about ever. And his sidekick, Aaron, says to that, well, I'm a man with no power. Does that make me a woman too? Right? So again, toxic masculinity. So many women and men in our culture stay in jobs they hate, in relationships that are sucking them dry emotionally and physically, in roles in their lives that deep down they know are toxic. They are not going to really take action towards their true soul's purpose because they're too scared to choose unpredictability, uncertainty, and change. So they stay in the same toxic circumstances. And this is why so many people in our culture are literally the walking dead. And Will Ferrell tells Barbie, everyone loves women. I have a mother, I have a sister, I love women. But Sasha reminds us, men hate women and women hate women. And it's the only thing that we can all agree on. Now, our culture is recognizing women more than ever before. And yet we still live in a patriarchal society that has other women feel jealous of each other. We don't lift each other up. We feel in competition with each other. Women hold very few positions of power in the government or on the Supreme Court. We're still not in control of the choices about our body. We're still given cultural messages that keep us feeling inadequate and never enough, which, by the way, also feeds capitalism. Now, in the real world, Ken is respected for just being Ken. He doesn't need degrees in the real world. In his words, Ken says, everything exists to expand and elevate the presence of men. And he goes back to Barbie Land and he changes the Constitution in one day to be of the Kens, by the Kens, and for the Kens. And he tells Barbie to literally, he says, roll with it, tiny baby. Now, he changes Barbie Land to Kendom. And all the Kens have a favorite song by Matchbox 20. And the lyrics are, I want to push you around. Well, I will. Well, I will. I want to push you down. I want to take you for granted. So at this point, Barbie collapses on the ground. She says, the Kens won. I am empty and worthless because I'm not the president. I'm not Nobel Peace Prize Barbie. I'm not Supreme Court Barbie. And now I'm not even superficial, beautiful Barbie. So if I'm not any of those things, I must be nobody. And this is the speech that literally left me sobbing. Okay. Gloria, who's played by America Ferrara, says, it is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, we have to be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but you also have to be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women, because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful, but never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, and never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out that, in fact, not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if all that is also true for a doll just representing women, then I don't even know. By giving voice to the cognitive dissonance required to be a woman under the patriarchy, you're robbed of its power. Now, that patriarchy has taken over Kendom. So the Kens actually go to war against each other because they all feel inferior and in competition. So as men, they're pitted against one another in the patriarchy that was created in Kendom. The patriarchy actually plays on their egos and jealousy. So in Ken's song, when all the Kens get together and sing, "I'm just Ken," he says, "Am I not hot when I'm in my feelings?" Right? Women don't like men to express too many feelings. We don't like men to be too weak. We want them to express their feelings, but not so much that we feel like they're not being masculine enough. Right? So even men are fighting this patriarchy and fighting each other so that men too can feel like enough, which I thought was hysterical. Now, this is literally how men are destroying themselves and they're destroying each other. So when the Barbies return to power, Barbie actually apologizes to Ken for taking him for granted. And we don't pay enough attention to the emotional pain our culture inflicts on men. Barbie tells Ken that he needs to discover who Ken is outside of the patriarchy. Who is Ken without Barbie and his mink and his job as Beach? All the things that make Ken who he actually is don't make him Ken. But we don't recognize this in our culture, and we don't acknowledge that men are also incredibly damaged by our patriarchy. Now, both Barbie and Ken need to discover who they are without each other and without the patriarchy. And Barbie tells Ken, "We were only fighting because we don't know who we are." Mind-blowing. Now, Barbie meets her creator, Ruth, and Ruth tells Barbie, we mothers stand still so our daughters can look back to see how far they've come." That one really hit home for me. And Barbie tells Ruth, "I'm not really sure where I belong. I don't even have an ending." And Ruth says, "That's the point. The point is there is no point. No one looks like Barbie. Humans have one ending, death. And humans make things up like patriarchy and Barbie to deal with the uncomfortable inevitability of death." I want you to think about that. We think that things in our life are so important, right? What do people think of us? What's our status? Where do we belong? How many people love us? How pretty are we? How thin are we? How much money are we making? How much success do we have? But at the end of our life, this is what we all grapple with. There is nothing as significant as we make it be while we are living here on this earth. And we need to ask ourselves and look to our creator, whether that's God or the universe. Why do I struggle so much with feeling like I don't belong? What perfection am I trying to attain in order to feel like I matter? This is our most important work, to really understand who are we when we are separate from the conditioned mind that we all have that's been given to us by our culture. So thank you for listening to all of this. If you have not gone to take your inner critic assessment, you can go to innercriticassessment.com and it will show you your unique profile of your inner critic, how it first came on the scene of your life, how it's been impacting you, how it's been impacting the most important people of your life. It's a very useful resource, and it's my gift to you. If you're interested in hearing about any of my programs and the Mastering Your Mind community, you can go to dethroningyourinnercritic.com and schedule some time to chat with me. I'd love to speak to you. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.